Blondina is a young blonde girl with gray eyes. Orphaned by a mother with a nameless father, she works at an inn for a cruel man who never hesitates to beat her up whenever he wants. One day, he threatens to sell her to a local baron, whose reputation is to torture and kill little girls like her to pay off his gambling debts. So she runs away, crying in the street, not wanting to die so horribly. She falls on the ground, dropping a precious ring she inherited from her late mother. Before she died, her mother told her that it was a gift from her father and that she must keep it safe at all costs. Blondina enters a pawn shop. At first, the owner doesn't want to deal with her, but when he sees the ring, he jumps off his seat, asking where she stole it, and comes back with guards to take her. She is taken to a very luxurious place and sits in a corner, terrified. Moments later, a man enters the room. He asks about her mother, then declares that he is her father, the emperor. A few days after arriving at the palace, Blondina learns about the imperial etiquette and rules. As she wakes up, a servant tells her that she is demanded at a tea party with the emperor. When she arrives, he introduces her to her half-siblings, Larte and Adelaide. After the tea party, Larte catches her in the corridor and starts insulting her. She replies back, humiliating him, which of course angers him. While he is heating up, she keeps her cool, not really knowing why he reacts like this. Adelaide intervenes to stop the commotion. She looks down on Blondina, and because the girl just wants to get rid of them, she brushes it off, smiles, and leaves. On her way back to her room, she passes by a garden where she hears a meowing. She follows the noise and finds a cute black kitten. The cute little beast protests in a human language. "I'm not a cat." But Blondina is not impressed. She notices his injured leg and connects it to a broken branch. Nearby, she also spots two other cats hiding and scolds them for bullying their friend. They run away, and the little girl offers to take the kitten with her to the palace. They both head to her room when they meet a servant and Blondina freezes, choking the cat. He sees her reaction to the servant and increases his presence, making him bow his head to the ground. Blondina is surprised by this reaction. Her cat jumps from her arms and transforms into a cute, dark-skinned human boy. Blondina is utterly impressed by the boy's appearance. The servant recognizes him as the Black Leopard, the cruelest of them all. Since Blondina is not really comfortable with the servant around, the boy shortcuts this encounter by asking what he wants from her. He delivers her the royal bracelet the emperor wanted to give her and leaves. The young boy turns to Blondina, and she frustrates him because she cluelessly doesn't acknowledge his greatness. He turns back into a cat to be carried as they head again to her room. Once there, he reveals his name, Amun. By the time she finishes healing his leg, night has fallen, so he decides to stay and sleep in her bed. Amun finds any sort of excuse to visit the princess. Elsewhere in the palace, the emperor is desperate to find someone with blonde hair, golden eyes, and the power to submit the divine leopards. Unlike his daughter, who may be blonde, but has gray eyes. He remembers Blondina's mother, who matched these features but had no power. Despite that, the emperor fell deeply in love with her. He wanted to protect her and their baby at all costs, so he left them to get the power of the throne. A few days later, Blondina and her lady-in-waiting Lucy discuss how long it's been since the last time they saw Amun. When the cat appears out of nowhere with a bleeding sparrow in his mouth, Lucy rushes out, not able to endure the sight of the poor dead thing. Blondina tries to explain to Amun that usually humans find little sparrows cute only when they are alive. Amun turns to the bird and demands that he gets up or he would be definitely dead. The talking bird suddenly revives and explains to the princess that he stayed still because of Amun's sharp teeth. Since he has no name, she decides to name him Magetto. Amun wants to watch an archery contest to analyze human weapons. At the contest, the emperor enters the scene with Larte and Adelaide, only leaving Blondina behind, and announces the beginning of the hunt. After some time, Amun gets bored, so Blondina offers him to go observe the trees instead. She finds one interesting when an arrow whistles just near her ear, as she trembles out of fear, and Amun out of rage. Larte shows up nagging. Amun can't take it and jumps on him, transforms and presses the prince on the ground under his feet. Later, Larte complains to Adelaide about what happened, and she surprisingly doesn't have his back, but she reassures him, saying that she will personally avenge him. Adelaide goes to the emperor's office, seemingly upset about how the imperial family is not as powerful as they should be, because of the divine leopards wandering around as they wish. The emperor looks at his daughter, considers her to inherit the throne, and tells her about the legend of the golden-eyed blonde people who descended from Barahan, heir of the first god and the only one able to defeat those creatures. He encourages her to find them and bring them to the palace so she can become the new empress. Later, Blondina gets prepared to attend a party organized by the emperor. When she goes to the ballroom without Amun, she becomes the target of all the rumors. People talk about her dress and her lack of friends. The emperor arrives, talks to Larte and Adelaide, and encourages them to include their sister and not leave her alone. Philip, a young marquis, seems really interested in Blondina. The princess sits on a bench, thinking about how she doesn't need to understand what the others are saying to figure out what they are talking about. She unpacks a piece of pie and speaks loudly about how delicious it is. Out of nowhere, a wild Amun appears and steals the pie. She hugs him tightly, happier to spend time with him than with the other humans. The day after, Blondina learns how to play chess with Lucy. When the Marquis Philip is announced, the princess is defiant, not really sure why he is here. He gives her some tea, flowers, and a brooch. Amun kindly offers to teach her Old Etesian, the language Adelaide and Larte speak with their friends, so they cannot ridicule her. They start their course, and while Blondina wonders how he will be able to write and teach her with his paws, he turns into his human form, leaving her speechless. She mentions shyly that she is illiterate, which is not a real issue but might become complicated later. So Amun asks Lucy if she can teach Blondina how to read Standard Etesian. Some days later, Blondina sits by a fountain in the garden. She tries to read words Amun wrote on a note, but as she struggles with one, the emperor shows up and reads it. He sits next to her and asks if she is adjusting properly to the palace. He also mentions how much she looks like her mother, and speculates about her life after him, which Blondina corrects, saying her mom never loved anyone else but the emperor. Back in her room, Lucy lets her know that Philip sent another invitation, since his birthday party is planned for the same day. Blondina finally decides to attend since her Old Etesian has improved, and she feels more comfortable facing the crowd. When she arrives at the party, she greets Philip, who is accompanied by Adelaide and Larte. They notice the brooch adorning her neck, the exact same one Adelaide wears. The younger princess gets angry and asks Philip in Old Etesian to never invite her anymore if Blondina is to come. She also insults Blondina and is backed up by Larte, but their sister is not having it anymore, and talks back in the same language, humiliating her. Larte is surprised by her use of this language and asks how she learned it, to which she reminds him that she is an imperial princess too. Inside, Blondina apologizes to Philip for the commotion. She explains that she's used to dealing with her siblings' nastiness, and that she has no need or will to overthrow Adelaide's position in society and mostly wants to stay humble. But unfortunately, her sister doesn't understand. She politely asks the Marquis to not invite her anymore to avoid this issue in the future, and Philip suddenly feels his heart pounding loudly in his chest. In her room, Blondina asks Lucy and Maggetto about the relationship between mankind and divine leopards. At first, they are both dumbfounded by her ignorance on the subject since it's common knowledge, but they end up explaining that these two groups of people have been meaninglessly battling for centuries before agreeing on a truce. However, 500 years ago, there appeared a descendant of Barahan, who had the ability to control all the divine leopards, so he almost had them all exterminated until a black leopard managed to kill him and avenge his dead comrades. After all these deaths, humans and leopards came up with another peace treaty. A servant enters with a beautiful bracelet as a gift for Blondina. The letter mentions that the Marquis Philip is leaving to study in another country. In his carriage, Philip thinks about the princess, recalling how confident and direct she is despite her lack of education and noble bloodline. He plans to come back to her after his studies to marry her. Amun appears when Blondina is trying on the bracelet. His jealousy shows when he asks who sent it and why. It shows even more when he takes it off her wrist and rushes out. A week later, Amun hasn't shown up and Blondina worries. During the night, she has a horrible nightmare involving slaughters and fights. She's woken up by Amun, who pokes her face with his paw. He gives her a ring. She loves it, but since it feels a bit loose on her finger, she decides to wear it as a necklace. A few days later, the whole imperial family gathers to welcome representatives of another kingdom because of a new trade agreement. A snake comes to Adelaide, who screams in fear. When it goes to Blondina, however, she has no reaction whatsoever, so she is complimented by the emperor for her royal behavior. This angers Adelaide, who seeks her father's approval as well. After leaving, Blondina thinks about what happened and how, despite her father's efforts, she still doesn't feel like she belongs. Amun shows up and her mood instantly improves as she hugs him tight. A noble from the other kingdom shows up. They discuss the garden when he suddenly approaches his hand close to her. She fears this move at first, but a cute black snake gets out of his handle and slides to hug her. He explains how glad he is to be able to exchange with a pet lover. Amun's jealousy shows up again, and he tries to beat the poor snake. Lucy and Blondina are discussing in the garden about an incoming horseback riding competition, and when the princess mentions that she never rode, her lady-in-waiting brings her to a nearby place where people are practicing. Lart, riding his horse, notices them and blushes. Amun is not impressed, and makes some moves to get some compliment, confusing Blondina about his intentions. She thinks that he does all this only to please Lucy. Then they hear someone screaming. Lart has fallen from his horse and is now sitting on the ground, his ankles sprained. Feeling pathetic, the ladies rush to help him. He tries to stand proudly but falls again. He is caught by Lucy, who then asks him to sit so she can perform first aid on his ankle. Lart looks incredibly embarrassed and shy during the whole process. He almost yells at her to leave him alone when he gets up, but she doesn't listen and helps him walk anyway. Later that night, he thinks about her, and about his father teaching him that a good emperor doesn't fall in love. Years later, Lucy and Blondina are all grown up now. Ammon, however, still looks like a cute cat, so the princess wonders if he grows up at all. Yet when she wants to play with him, he runs away to chase Megiddo. She notices that for quite a long time now, he barely lets her touch him, as if he likes someone else. The next morning, when the sun has not risen already, Lucy enters Blondina's room to wake her up. However, she notices an intruder by her side. When the man turns towards her, she recognizes the gemstone on his forehead. Ammon, human, grown up, hot as hell. A few days later, he lays in the grass under his cat form. The great elder Aisha of the Divine Leopard clan joins him to talk about his coming-of-age ritual and his decision about who will be his observer. He lets her know that as the firstborn of the previous head of the clan, he would like to have the humans' emperor's firstborn Blondina. First, because he likes her, and second, as a reminder to the humans of who's in charge. A few days later, at the imperial palace, the emperor and the empress discuss the leopard's invitation to the ceremony. She makes a comment about being happy to not have her own children attending, which leads to a death glare from her husband, as Blondina is also his child and needs to be considered as such. Blondina enters the room and is informed by the invitation. She accepts to attend the ceremony, despite the potential risks, and leaves. Elsewhere in the palace, Adelaide is informed about the invitation, and needless to say, she doesn't take it well. Blondina and Amen are in her room sealing some letters to be sent to Lucy. She asks him why he didn't tell her before about the situation ceremony, and if there is anything she needs to prepare or do in order to not make any mistakes. Amun proudly says that he will manage everything, which reminds her of how commoners propose her marriage. This triggers Amund to a whole new level of embarrassment. She explains it because Lucy and her have reached a marriageable age, and this information seems to interest the leopard a lot. Blondina is irritated at his reaction, convinced that the situation excites him only because of Lucy. She moves the subject back to the coming-of-age ritual, asking when it takes place. 3 days later, as the princess is ready to leave for the forest, the emperor comes to wish her a safe trip. This behavior keeps Blondina confused during the whole carriage ride. When she arrives, she is welcomed by 2 happy young leopards who will also participate in the ritual at night. The ceremony goes on for the 3 creatures facing their observers. Blondina is utterly impressed by everything, even a bit scared, since she's the only human among divine creatures. She finally realized that Amun is for a fact a member of the Divine Leopards clan, and that she is pretty much nothing in comparison. But when Amin gets her out of her mind, she hugs him tightly in front of the whole clan. He takes her to his place for her to sleep, and she discovers at the same time that not only he has a house, but also lives alone without any parent or relative. At Amin's house, he offers her to wash up, so she takes her cape off, triggering him into thinking she would totally strip in front of him. She teases him about that, remembering the cute boy he used to be. She realizes at the same time that she hasn't seen him in his human's form for years now. Convinced that she wouldn't blink an eye if he stripped before her in his human form, she leaves to the bathroom. Amun stays behind, all flustered and blushing. Blondina and Aman are now in bed, not sleeping. The day after, they both ride Blondina's horse to get back to the human empire. They unfortunately encounter some bandits eager to steal from or rape her. Ammon requires Blondina to dismount the horse named Daisy and unleashes it against the men. All of them crash on the ground, injured. One of them tries to get up, and the princess notices his golden eyes, like her mother used to have. Amin and Blondina are now riding to her hometown, and the closer they get, the more anxious she gets. The cat notices the tension and hugs her to cheer her up. He is with her, so everything is going to be just fine. They meet a young man she used to know. He doesn't recognize her but gladly leads her to the inn. Once arrived, she nervously enters the place. Neither the innkeeper nor his wife seems to recognize her. They even behave lovely to her, offering to show her their best rooms for her to stay on the stairs. The woman turns around to talk to her, when she snaps and recognizes the little girl who used to work for her. Instantly the mood changes, and the innkeeper starts making assumptions about her life since she left, treating her like trash. As he tries to grab her hand, she rejects it and slaps him hard in the face. He raises his fist to her, but she stops him, threatening him with heavy consequences. Her imperial attitude scares the man, so she manages to make him apologize and lead her to her room. Once behind the safety of the door, she falls on the floor. Amun congratulates her and thinks about killing the innkeeper. During her stay, Blondina makes the couple work a lot to please her. One evening, as she eats, she announces to them that she has a present in memory of everything they did for her when she was a kid. She shows them the deed to the inn, making her the new owner of the place. She orders them to pack their things and leave by the morning. The man pleads with her to spare them, as they have nowhere else to go. Those words make her remember her own situation. Back then she had nowhere else to go as well, so they took advantage of her. Even at her weakest, she will have no mercy. During the night, the innkeeper heads to Blondina's room, a knife in hand, ready to torture and kill, having no clue that someone else more easily evil patiently waits for him to make a move. Amun glances at him in the dark and grins as the man shivers in fear. Amun wakes Blondina up for breakfast. She quickly washes up and they go to the common area, where they discover that the innkeeper has been attacked and injured. During the night she leaves with Amun, happy to have finally been able to close this chapter of her life. Later, at the imperial palace, Larte enthusiastically inquires about the ritual to his sister and how large the divine beasts really are, as he wonders why she was the one invited when he is the apparent heir to the throne. It has been a few weeks now that Amun left to attend the final battle to determine who will become the new leader of the divine beasts. Before leaving, he told Blondina that he would be absent for an entire month, not concerned at all about the outcome of the ritual. Yet she keeps on worrying, as she doesn't want him to get hurt. The day after, she suggests to Lucy that they go together to the forest of the divine beasts to pick up some mushrooms and taste some raspberries. Larte, who is passing by, offers to escort them in the forest. The ladies crouch on the ground to observe the mushrooms as Blondina tells Lucy about some species. Larte is unimpressed and takes the opportunity to make some nasty comments about his sister's commoner background and is shocked when Lucy defends her friend. They get up to leave and Blondina tells him that he can join them only if he apologizes. Surprisingly, he proceeds sincerely, proving to Blondina how much he cares for Lucy, if he is willing to change his behavior to please her. After walking for quite some time now, Larte starts to worry, and despite Blondina's confidence, she also starts to feel off, and suggests moving back to the palace. However, they get lost, and as Larte feels an incoming danger, he draws his sword and brings the two ladies in his arms to protect them. A wild, aggressive bear appears from behind the bushes, so Blondina orders Larte and Lucy to head to the left while she attracts the beast in the opposite direction. Larte protests, but too late, she starts running, calling Amun a bit further. She falls on the ground, scared nonetheless happy that Larte and Lucy could have run away. As the bear approaches, she thinks about her cute little cat and closes her eyes. A scratching noise resounds and she opens her eyes to discover Amun in his adult leopard form. Blondina prevents him from killing the bear, stating that it is her fault if it attacked her. She suddenly remembers Lucy and Amun gets angry at her, saying that she shouldn't be in the forest currently, because the magic is unstable. They go find the two others and Larte jumps, scared. Seeing Amun, Lucy recognizes him and is reassured. Amun acts all sweet and kind to Lucy, bringing up some jealousy in Blondina's heart. Amun escorts them all to the palace. The ladies thank him, and the beast announces to the princess that he will sleep with her tonight. Facing her confusion, he asks if she is afraid of him, and states that no matter what, she cannot be afraid because she belongs to him. In her bed, with Amun beside on the floor, Blondina is concerned. She asks him if he likes Lucy, which he answers positively, without any form of hesitation, which upsets her, because she finally realizes after all these years that if she enjoys his presence so much, it's because she loves him.
Love the manhwa? Subscribe for more. Your support makes it all possible. Hit subscribe now!